Beer is one of the most oldest and widely consumed alcoholic beverages in the world. It is made with natural ingredients and bottled with an incredible speed. So how is beer produced? In today's video, we follow the process of harvesting barley and brewing craft beer. Sometimes there's nothing quite like a nice cold beer, but creating that one-of-a-kind flavour is not easy. Everything starts from the barley fields. Barley is typically grown in temperate climates. In the United States, the northern and western regions are the main barley growing regions. Amongst them, Idaho, Montana, North Dakota, and Washington are the leading barley producing states. Barley is sown in the spring. At first, it will look like grass. After growing to a height of 30 to 40 centimeters, they will begin to form seeds. Barley growing conditions can vary depending on the cultivator. However, barley grows best at 13 degrees Celsius. Barley harvest time depends on grain moisture and the weather in the field. Barley is ripe and ready to harvest when the grain moisture content ranges from 12.5 to 18%. If the moisture content of the grain is lower, farmers need to take special storage measures if the grain is too wet. Barley is usually harvested using combine harvesters and barley threshers. The barley harvest is handled with particular care. If used to produce malt, the harvest standards are higher. The barley itself needs to be dry so that the combine harvester can easily separate the grain from the straw. Typically, winter barley is harvested in July, and spring barley is harvested in August. After harvest, the barley is brought to this location, where it will be sampled and tested for germination levels and various quality parameters to ensure a top quality product. Producers must consider many factors, including skin adhesion, mold, frost damage, and common plant diseases. After passing the test, the next step is malting. Barley grains after harvest are starchy and have a grassy smell. If you brew beer immediately, the yeast won't be able to access those complex carbohydrates. Therefore, malting is the key process to convert barley into malt and determines the color, aroma, and flavor of beer. It starts by soaking the barley in water and letting the barley absorb the moisture. After several hours, the water is drained and the seeds are exposed to air. It goes through several stages of moistening and oxidation to activate the workpiece. The soaking process will end when the grain moisture increases to an average of 45%. This usually takes around 3 to 5 days, depending on the type of barley and the environment. Next, during the germination stage, you will see a lot of roots growing, which is a good sign. Starch storage occurs in a process called thermodynamics, and producers must control sprouting to ensure uniform germination. Producers turn the seeds periodically to ensure that the roots are woven together and inhibit airflow through the seeds. The drying process is the final stage, so they conduct drying using warm air. The process begins with the germinated barley being spread out in an oven and heated to the right temperature. Drying is important because it can affect the color and flavor of the barley and prevent the grain from growing into a plant. The heat will then help dry the barley and also help break down the starch into simpler sugars. Yeast is then used in the fermentation process. The boiler is also a very important part of the process. because it affects the colour and flavour of the malt. Canadian barley is renowned around the world for its high quality, with more than 23,000 farmers producing approximately 8 million tonnes of barley each year. Producers take barley from the fields and it goes through a malting process at the mill. But why was barley chosen to make beer? Barley is the #1 grain used in beer production because it has the right properties. With the explosion in popularity of craft breweries, experimentation with flavors, processes, and ingredients is at an all-time high. Soaking barley is the process of activating enzymes inside the grain. Barley will be poured into the tub, and they are soaked in water and completely saturated. The manufacturer changes the water once a day, every 45 to 72 hours. The seeds are aerated and stirred to germinate, releasing enzymes that convert the starch contained in the seeds into sugars for fermentation. Milling barley is an important step because it increases the surface area of the production process, making the barley more accessible to water. Manufacturing plants often use specialized milling equipment, such as roller mills or hammer mills, to grind barley. Next, the barley is mixed with warm water until it is as thick as mixed porridge. Boiling is an important step in the manufacturing process because it sterilizes, killing any unwanted microorganisms. Depending on the time of boiling, hops are added to increase bitterness. The longer the hops are boiled, the more bitter the beer becomes. Usually hops are added after the boiling process, during the last 15 to 30 minutes, contributing to the flavour. The boiling process usually lasts around 60 to 90 minutes. All this is done inside the kettle. There was 7 to 12 feet in diameter and steam 2 stories high to provide heating power for the kettle. Once the brewing process is complete, the mixture is filtered again and pumped into the fermentation tank. Fermentation is where the magic happens. There are 2 types of fermentation during beer production. These are first stage primary fermentation and secondary fermentation. When yeast is most active, it consumes most of the sugar and creates beer. Beer is packaged in a variety of formats, including bottles and cans. The packaging process is important to preserve quality. Some beers are filtered again to remove any remaining solids and yeast before packaging. Producers also measure factors such as alcohol content, bitterness, pH, and colour. Breweries use a variety of techniques to ensure that their beer is consistent in flavour and overall quality. Kelowna residents are having a great time making craft beer. They have a small brewery space. Although small in scale, every production step is similar to large factories. They work hard to produce quality beer. Having multiple kegs full of beer opens up many opportunities to create many different styles of beer. Kelowna is located at the northern end of the desert, so water scarcity has become a problem for brewers. When using a standard kettle system, a brewer needs 4 to 6 litres of water to make 1 litre of beer. Because the amount of water needed is so much, saving water is important. They can filter and reuse clean water into fermentation tanks to make the next batch of beer. Brewers are conscious and sensitive to the expansion of this agricultural industry. Economic development and environmental friendliness are what they aim for. They use spent grain after the brewing process as animal feed.